Once again, I start out by making a really light pass in red Coloris pencils. I try to sketch out the drawing as a whole before I start to really refine anything. For this drawing, I ended up doing 3 refinement passes. The first is a light sketch, just kind of getting everything in there. The second is to solidify the drawing. The third stage of the sketch is to really nail things down close to what I want the final links to look like and add in a lot of the little details. Don't feel like you have to do 3 layers of sketch on all your drawings. You can draw your drawing however you want. It even varies from drawing to drawing for me. Sometimes I only do 1 sketch. Sometimes I do a thumbnail drawing before I even attempt a sketch. Sometimes I don't even do a sketch. This particular drawing has 3 initial sketch passes. Now to begin inking. You'll notice I'm turning the paper a lot. I found that with inking there's a sweet spot to how I hold the pen and move my hand that lets me get a good line with the most control. So what I'm doing is turning the paper to favor my hand strengths, depending on which way the lines on the paper are going. I will admit a lot of times I forget to do this, but at least in the beginning of this video, there's a good example of me showing off this practice. I really like a thin line, so I'm using a Micron Pigma pen with a 0.1 thickness. It makes a really thin pen line. So with inking, it's just a process of filling in the rest of the drawing, 1 creature and 1 building at a time. Because this drawing is so detailed, after I finish drawing each thing, I like to go back into it and fill in all the shadows. Mainly I'm doing this now to make sure I don't forget to do so later, but I will admit adding the shadows really makes that part of the drawing look finalized. It's traditional to use a brush and ink to fill in those large black areas, but I can be pretty clumsy with a bottle of ink and a brush. So instead of possibly ruining the drawing, I like to use Sharpies and brush pens. Brush pens are a lot more controllable than traditional brush and ink. This multi-headed creature was one of the funnest things to draw. I love drawing tentacles, and I got to add some neat little details like a truck and a helicopter being crushed by the jaws of the creature. I always wish I added more little details like this when I'm done like a drawing, but sometimes it's hard to think of more little details to add. Here I'm using a Tombow ABT N15 brush pen to fill in the blacks. I tend to use the pen side to thicken up the ink outlines, and then I'll flip the pen over and use the brush side to fill in the large areas. You'll notice that I started adding explosions to areas between the monsters and the buildings. I'm doing this for 2 reasons. The first is to add more dark areas throughout the drawing. When you start adding in large sections of black to a black and white image, you can easily end up with an unbalanced drawing. The darker areas will naturally really draw the eye to them. So instead of one part of the drawing being a dark vortex of focus, it's good to distribute black patches throughout the drawing. The second reason I'm doing this is, it will make my job easier. There's so much detail in this drawing, I was worried that adding in the bottoms of the buildings would just muddy things up. These explosions will be a fun, easy, and abstract, repetitive pattern that'll tie the drawing together while not taking the focus away from what's important. The Kaijus! A lot of times when I'm drawing at night, the lights I'm using attract all sorts of insect friends. You can see them from time to time walking across my drawings. Like right there. Now I know I said earlier to draw the drawing as a whole at all times, but sometimes I feel lazy and I don't totally figure out sections till later. With this particular drawing, I was feeling a little burnt out and uncreative when I initially sketched out the top portion of the drawing, so I left it in a rough stage, planning to come back to it later when I felt ready to draw some original looking creatures. So here I am finally going back in and refining the sketchy sections. By this point in the drawing, I'm ready to be finished, but there's still more kaiju to be drawn. Hang in there, hand, we're almost done. I've always found that if my brain is tired and the drawing isn't turning out the way I want it to, or I don't have the energy to turn out a good kaiju, I'll take a break from that part of the drawing and do something else that uses another part of my brain, like starting to ink. Sometimes I'll move on to inking just to continue being productive, but it also gives the part of my brain reserved to creating kaijus a chance to recuperate. Consistent breaks when needed are just as important as the time you take to draw the image. Now I'm refining and inking the last corner of the drawing. The only thing left to do is erase the colored pencil. There we go. A finished image. Well, not totally finished. I still need to color it. But that's something I will address in a future video. So the final colored version of this drawing will be used as a cover for one of the 3 new character design zines I'm planning on printing out before the end of the year. There's a mermaid zine, this zine, which will be all kaiju, and then I'll also have a robot zine that has been all sketched out for years and I just never finished up the images. Anyway, there'll be more news on all of the zines when they're closer to being done. Thanks again for tuning in and watching me draw. I hope you all have a good week. Bye-bye.